It was not about following a trend or producing something which was on demand, because back then
it was not very
2007 there
trendy
was
to produce natural wine. It was not cool, it was not sexy.
You take that seriously, the biodynamics, you quickly realize it's not just a farming method. You basically start to question everything in life in the best sense. What is a wine in a bottle? A wine in a bottle is thousands and thousands of small steps and decisions. We cannot let somebody judge this with 20 points or 100 points or whatever, because there is no judgment in that sense. Okay?
Hello, Ed and Steph. Servus. Well, willkommen in Australia. Wie geht's euch?
Sehr gut.
Sehr gut?
Sehr gut.
Ah, danke.
You have a great Austrian accent, actually, when you speak German.
Dankeschön. Thank you. Well, I have something to tell you. My grandmother is Austrian.
Really?
Yeah, so we have something in common.
Nice, but you did a good choice to go to Australia.
I think so. You said you were going to sell everything and move here.
No, because it's so welcoming and the people are amazing. I mean, you're all like warm, nice, like honest. I mean, this is what we get the feeling from, and yeah, I mean, we really feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Yes, we're very intense people here in Australia.
No, but
and we love our wine. No, of course. So I'd love to start, just take me back to 2007 when you guys started Guttigau. Like what brought you to that point? And I know you took over that amazing old property. Take us back there and how it all started.
Yeah, I mean, we just met basically a couple of months before, and I quickly asked Steph if she would marry me, and that was 3 months after we met. And then the only master plan we had, we wanted to do something together, but we didn't have any real clue. Could have been a restaurant, a wine bar, anything. And now looking back, actually, we both feel that as much as we found the place found us as well. So it was meant to be, We passed by this old winery and then kind of knocked on the doors just to see if there's a chance. And there was nobody living there anymore, but so it was kind of semi-abandoned. But the former owner, she was in her 80s and she didn't have any kids, so she kind of lost track. Yeah, we could start with something new, but had this kind of huge tradition in the best sense in the back, and that has also driven us where we are now. We started working with those old vineyards, and the
vineyards were on the property, the winery. Yeah.
And that also certainly shaped our vision and our philosophy. Working with those old, say, grumpy vines and getting them back in shape with biodynamic methods. Everything came into place, but we both, I would say, we felt from the start, this is a journey where we can kind of go into the direction of a safe harbor, but it's not about reaching that harbor, it's about the journey as such. And I mean, nearly 20 years later, we're sitting here with you. We would have never dreamt of that, but now it's materialized. So, I mean...
That's how these journeys go. Likewise, when we started, I wouldn't have imagined sitting down and speaking to you, so it's nice.
No, but it took a little bit, I have to say, like this old estate, we have like these old tree presses, like this... how you call it, like this...
vertical presses,
vertical presses from out of the 18th century. But we took over, and I think, because you say journey, I think in my case, because I was 25, he was 29, we had no clue which burden we take, It was like really step after step, and it was kind of, I think, if you start a business, or if you start something where you say, okay, this is what I want to do for my life, you don't see, you don't see that far. And sometimes it's good to have this naiveness, to be couraged enough to do something. But
it's too hard otherwise, isn't it? If you knew how hard it would be, you would never start, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
And so were you, Ed, I know you came from like a winemaking background. Were you working in Burgenland?
No. My parents used to have a winery in the southern part of Austria, close to Slovenia. So it's not a long distance. It's 200 kilometers apart. But the worlds are two different worlds in terms of the landscape, the climate and everything. So that's in general for Austria on a rather small geographical size. You have lots of different wine growing regions, terroirs and everything they like. So it's quite exciting also to visit and see the different places.
And so based around the town of Ogal. So that's obviously a very unique kind of terroir and spot where you are there. Can you explain a little bit about the region and were you immediately drawn to organic and biodynamic farming when you started?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there was not even a question.
Yeah. But also maybe like looking back a little bit also driven by that place, because we definitely wanted to revitalize those old vineyards, and how to do that best is in the most sensitive way. And that's the biodynamic farming. So that was certainly also part of the inspiration. But if you take that seriously, the biodynamics, you quickly realize it's not just a farming method. You basically start to question everything in life in the best sense. And that's leading you into that holistic approach, which as a result and as a consequence brings a certain individuality into the farm, into the vineyards, and it shapes the uniqueness of whatever comes out of a farm. And in our case, the reference, of course, is the wines. So they are so unique and they represent so much that particular terroir, that particular region, those particular vineyards. And that's the beauty also for us, because every year those personalities in the bottle, they get more firm, more self-confident, and it's not going to end, actually. We just have to continue that way, and still with the grit and sensitivity. And in the end, the wines will get sharper and sharper and better. So if you love that vintage, be sure the next is even more exciting.
Yeah, because we are also, I think, this is also a huge difference. We are never brain driven, it's more like this gut driven idea, and also not searching for producing the best wine, because at the end for us it's the best anyways, because it's the best what we can do out of our vineyards, out of our nature, which gives us which fruit. And I always say, if you don't search and you be open for things, then you find so much more you can ever imagine, And this is something what also nature teaches us, like let go from expectation, let go from anything else, and you will find so much more you couldn't even know that it exists.
That was my next question, because a lot of people make wine working backwards from the end product that they think the market needs. It needs a $30 Blaufränkisch, and we're going to, how do we go and make that? Well, this is what we're going to do with the vineyards. Did you have any idea when you started about the kind of wines you wanted to make, or were you literally just like, let's just see what these vineyards do?
For us, it was really to find out about the identity of the vineyards, period, and the natural potential they carry. And it was not about following a trend or producing something which was on demand, because back then,
it was not very trendy to
no.
produce natural wine.
2007,
It was not cool. It was not sexy.
We needed to argue a lot why we are different. And that was also sometimes a little bit frustrating, because we just felt that's the way to do it for us. We didn't want to kind of always declare ourselves or explain ourselves why. But it was necessary, and was maybe good also, because together with a few other growers, we paved the ground for the movement. And now I would say, natural wine, whatever the declaration or the interpretation is, the big legacy of the natural wine movement, which we've been a very early part of, is that again, people realize that in the best sense, wine can be a farm produce, an agricultural produce. Before that, like say in the 90s, 2000s, mostly around the world, people would consider wine as a drink. Yeah. There was no connection with the farmland. And that's what natural wine really brought back into people's minds. Okay, in the best case, it makes a difference how the vineyards are farmed, because the wine can show this as a sensitive produce of the vineyards, and it can show whether it's farmed this way or that way, whether it's farmed with care or not. And that's a good thing, basically.
You mentioned about finding the personalities of the vineyards, and that it can be seen through the labels and the actual names of the wines. So now these are your siblings and grandparents and parents, is it?
No, they're fictional faces, and they describe the character of the wines, which of course are defined through terroir and climate.
How did you go through that process? Because now you just get AI, right? You would just submit a sample, or you'd enter in your numbers. ChatGPT, give me a picture. No, I'm just joking. How did you go about coming up with the personality?
Don't tell anyone. We were a little bit drunk.
That's when all the best ideas
No, but also like it had said, like we took over these vineyards. Then we said, okay, let's go in this very poor idea of like also to recognize, okay, where does the journey goes. And then we realized also in the cellar after retasting and tasting that they are so unique and they're so full of character. And then we said, okay, why not describing them as they would be people? And for us, it felt so also intimate, like it's not for us. Of course, now it's nice because everyone is recognizing our label and everyone is like, yeah, it's great marketing. But for us, it's so close to our heart because it's so, intimate in a very,
I think it's normal to give them a name, but the picture it creates that extra connection.
Yeah, and I think, like also wine should be a connection, but wine should be also, and this is also what we realized later, that wine should be also for everyone and not only for one kind of person in the room, like who knows how to read a wine book and, like you connect with them even though you have no clue about wine because it's a cultural produce. It's not it's a cultural produce and culture belongs to everyone. And this is also what we want to celebrate,
So let's use Winifred as an example here, the lovely rosé we have. So talk to us about Winifred's personality.
So she comes from vineyards on the flatland. It's a very pure and poor gravel soil, no loam, no clay. So actually it's a very sporty, slim personality as such. But on the same hand, that gravel, which is a little bit fragile, gives her, if you first get to know her, quite a sensation of a little bit of an innocent, shy young lady. Is a grown up, so she's not a kid anymore, but she has a certain youthful temper to it. But on the same hand, you first get to know her, she seems a little bit intimidated, but you must not underestimate. She can be a little bit naughty as well, and she has a really strong character. And that's manifested on the palate because of that strong impact of the gravel soil here. So a very versatile character. Really, really nice and fun to hang out with her and to spend time with her. But again, you have to take her really seriously.
As your farming, evolves and the winemaking with it, do you intend on adapting the characters at all, aging them?
You never know.
You will know.
Never say never. You never know what future brings.
So drawing in a few wrinkles for lovely Winifred?
Maybe yes. So, but in the end, that youthful temper and that attitude we get from those vineyards, that's actually a constant factor. The vintages, they make us different. Sometimes the personality is a little bit more extroverted, sometimes more introverted. But that's due to the vintage. But this attitude, this personality we feel in those vineyards so far has been really recognizable.
There's a lovely energy and purity to that one. Tasting everything earlier, that was something I saw in all the wines, is that natural, easy purity in the wines. Like you mentioned about, we're trying to make them approachable to drink now. It's not about you have to lay them down for 10 years first before you drink them. Is that deliberate? Is that just how the vineyards are? Do you want to make wines that are approachable like that? What would you say is the kind of common style across the range?
Yeah, certainly. For us, it's you call it approachable. We call it harmonious and balanced, and that's of course what we want to achieve. Because in the end, that's
Yeah.
I like that. So that's what in nature, in the best sense, it's all about. It's about a certain balance. We never meant to long for extremes. We never wanted to polarize or to provoke as such. We were always searching for, and actually, as my wife said, more finding than searching, that natural balance. And if you have a beautiful ripe grape and you can pick the grape, also the grape actually doesn't suggest keep me for weeks in the fridge and then eat me because I need the time to ripen after the wine. You take the grape, you eat, and it's the best sensation you can get. For the wine, it takes a little bit longer, of course, because the wine basically only appears when the grape juice is fermented. And that's a period in the cellar, in the barrels, where everything is turned upside down. So that needs time again to balance. But we always felt depending on the vintage and the wine personality, in the first or second year of the vintage, we can bottle most of the wines, and then they are ready also to show their personalities, but in a very stable, timeless approach. So we are now tasting, and you did already taste the current vintages, but you can keep them for years and years in the bottle, and they will still be firm in character, show a little bit of a different facet here and there, but very recognizable and very stable.
As you said before, when you've got great balance in the grapes, that makes balanced wines and oxygen in the winemaking and everything as well.
Yeah, but I have also to say, like, it always sounds a little bit easy, but of course it takes this accurate farming approach. Then of course the picking at the right time, only healthy grapes, the rest comes on the floor. It's a very intense, but also very focused approach. You know, like for us, it's not like natural wine means cutting all the grapes and you press it and you ferment. It's like what we do is like really taking only the best grapes, which you would also eat, comes in a good basket, and the rest comes on the floor.
How does the farming approach during harvest, or even not during harvest, how does it differ between the different vineyards? Because you've got some sites that are on the flatlands, others that are higher altitude as well.
I mean, every site in the best sense we have to consider as an individuality, and some have certain demands here and some have certain demands there, also depending on the vintage. But it's hard to generalize. Certainly the difference sometimes we feel during the vegetation is some sites, they are earlier to start into vegetation, so we would probably earlier start to implement biodynamic preparations there. Others are later, so some, closer to the lake in the flatland is more sensitive to the slate frosts. On the hillside, a little bit more safe on that. Of course, in the flatland, there's an easier access to the water, other than on the very poor soil on the hillside. So that everything in the end adds up to different approaches. And again, that's what it takes. As I said, we have a certain individuality in our farm, but also we need to consider every vineyard with a certain respect and individual approach. But that's also what we want to represent with the wine family, because also in a family, you don't judge. You wouldn't say the young generation is good, the parents are better, and the grandparents is the best. That's nonsense. It's just different. They have a different potential, different stories to tell, different life experience, whatever. But we personally, we treat every single vineyard, every single wine personality with the same love, care, passion, energy, you name it. And the natural potential shows a different facet and different personality. And that's the beauty, what we also celebrate with this. Same, but different.
Yeah, but I have to say, like, he's more a gardener than a wine grower.
Yeah.
Because you are so into, like all the small details, which makes then the wine so almost electric and energetic, And it's fun because you always say, and maybe this, like you also don't judge the people of you are 91 points and the other one is 98. Like.
Do you have some 98 pointers? That would be really
I don't
helpful.
even know.
Wade, we can give everything 99 points, can't we? Yeah. I'll just.
No, but for us also, of course, it's common in the wine world, and we get it to a certain extent to have a certain reference. But for us, it's really perverted, and my wife also puts it that way. What is a wine in the bottle? A wine in the bottle is thousands and thousands of small steps and decisions during all the vegetation, starting in pruning in winter until vegetation season ends when we pick the grapes. We cannot let somebody judge this with 20 points or 100 points or whatever, because there is no judgment in that sense. We cannot compare. It is unique. And it's the same, agriculture is also part of culture. Art is part of culture. You would not rate a piece of art with 100 versus 98 versus 92%. Of course, you can say, I don't know, just to say anything, Picasso, of course, is special. And that's been proven because he shaped a certain age and a certain style in arts as such. But still, you would not say Picasso is 100 and Matisse as an impressionist, I don't know, is 79%, 79 points. Sure. It's nonsense, It's different and it's not to be compared. And for us, of course, if we would rate our wines, it would be 100 of 100 because we gave 100% every single day. And the outcome is 100% of the natural potential we have in our vineyards. That's just the fact, and that's the every step we could take leads to this, for us, perfect wine. But it's not in absolute terms perfect. It's just the perfect of the beauty of the imperfection we basically celebrate here.
Yeah, and also for us, it's fun sometimes. Like we try, of course, because we are all humans, and I need everything a little bit into boxes to guide us. Okay, is this good or not? And sometimes I'm like, we have nowadays this freedom to say whatever, and then why not giving someone the freedom to say, listen, I like it. It does good to me. And that's why it's good. And not, because it's costs, I don't know, 20 euros or 3,000 euros. And that's why, because it's more expensive. I mean, these boxes, I think we should get rid of it. I think so many generation worked for this freedom which we have today. And now we put again everything into,
Well, you can create a brand that people trust, and which you've done, because it's, as consumers, it's hard as well to go, which wine do I choose? If you go on our website, thousands of wines, which one do I choose? I need help. I need some of those boxes or whatever. But when you can build up a brand that people recognize and trust, and they resonate with the story, then that, I think, goes a long way. And then you don't need the other things.
That's true, but I think you're right. But for example, and this is the problem which we face now, but from the last decades. I mean, for example, Sauvignon, people are like, I love Sauvignon. And then they go after maybe in the web shop and say, this and this and that. But it makes it so uniform.
Yeah.
And Sauvignon, for example, or another grape, they can show so many different sides and palettes if we let go of this expectation, because then also the grower has the freedom to say, great, I grow Sauvignon, but I try to make it I don't know, something maybe different, and not this expectation what people have.
I love that you don't put the varieties on your wine. So that's obviously the same idea. And I love that because you're working, with all the classic Austrian varieties, and that is one narrative that you could take. But I like that you're saying, no, it's not about that. In fact, you've got all the hybrid varieties you were talking about, which is fascinating. But that's not the future. Which will be the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, that's another aspect, and we can talk for hours on this, but there's so many challenges we're facing in agriculture in general, viticulture. And many people stick to grape varietals also in the long run, which don't have the capacity to protect themselves against diseases. And that causes so many problems also in working the fields. And I mean, we are blessed in our area, it's not super steep hills, and we can work the vineyards well, even in difficult conditions when there's lots of rain or whatever. But imagine there's areas with very steep hills, and if it's raining a lot, then still they would have to go inside the vineyards with the tractor to protect. They risk their lives, literally, the growers, and it's not worth to risk a life for a bottle of wine. And the alternative to think of, say, hybrid grapes with a certain resistance against the diseases or tolerance against the disease, that's considered to be an alternative, and we have to take it seriously. And as growers also, that goes for agriculture in general, we have to be self-confident and say, okay, this is the potential we have in our area. This is what we can take, but we cannot satisfy any consumer's demand. We cannot satisfy any trend. We better stick to our natural potential. That's true. That's real. That's authentic. And those wines, we hope you love them, but if you don't, it's just the way it is, because the wines will not change. The wines show the potential of the vineyards. You love them or you leave them. It's the way it is.
When you started in 2007, you would have been out on an island doing this project when no one else really was. Has this started a new wave in Burgenland in Austria? I mean, I know there's a lot of other producers now making similar wines. Is that something that's been proud for you guys to watch this?
Totally. I mean, we are super proud to be Austrian, of course, and it's amazing to see, I think it's 25% already from all the farming vineyards are certified organic here.
Wow.
I mean, and this is
in
in
All
Austria.
over Austria. It's a huge
And
number.
this is great. Yeah.
Yeah, we cannot say the same thing here.
And that's ever rising every year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for good reason. I think because wine is such a sensitive produce of agriculture, in the end, as we mentioned before, any farming method shows and people talk about minerality, talk about terroir, and you can only make this like feel and to be tasted on the palate when you have a living soil. Because what basically minerality is all those small particles of the stones, which the roots of the vines can take through the sap and bring into the fruit. That's what we can taste as minerality. But these small particles, they can only be accessible for the plant if you have a certain life in the soil. If microorganisms like fungi, bacteria, nematodes, you name it, they basically grind the stones to get this accessible for the roots. And if you have a dead soil, if you work conventionally all the time and the synthetic fertilizers, they kill all the soil life, also the roots of the vines cannot access this. So for good reason, and then we would say probably it's not for ethical reason as such, but for quality reason, more and more of the high quality wineries around the world, say Burgundy, Bordeaux, you name it, they convert into organics or biodynamics because they feel if they want to talk of a certain minerality, if they want to showcase a certain terroir, they have to have a living soil. So there's a huge change going on now. And that's the positive thing, because viticulture has always been kind of a spare point of a certain movement because people love to talk about wine, and it's one of the agricultural produce that can travel all over the world, and people like to discuss and write books and to get interaction with. So if the vineyards go first and more are converted, that also will encourage many other farmland to be converted, and that's a positive thing.
Fantastic. This is delicious, by the way. Josephine, I'm not sure what the variety is because it doesn't matter. Lafreniere, Saint Laurent, Zweigelt, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter, but it's beautiful. It's got a richness and blushness to it, but just a purity and a effortless energy to it as well, which I love.
Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you. And what's the personality of Josephine then?
So for us, just as a background, this is vineyards on the hillside, rather facing south, so it's quite warm spots actually. And underneath is a very pure limestone, so that kind of keeps the wines really dense and fresh and vibrant. So for us, it's kind of this positively diverse and divided personality. So on the one hand, she has this very southern temper, friendly, proactive, and really open-minded. And on the same hand, she has a certain mysterious, cool, northern, witty character, like really bone dry in humor, and that's coming from the limestone, from the roots. So very winning, very charming personality, but also sometimes she can be a little bit with attitudes in the best sense. So all the personalities is never just one-dimensional. It's just multifaceted, and that's again the beauty of the natural potential.
Do your children come up with ideas for? I imagine if I did this project, my elder daughter would just be constantly drawing faces and wanting to add to the range. Is it something that interests them to add to the lineup?
Yeah, no, they are very interested. I mean, like I said, also, like, I think it's something cultural, and they're like now 18, 17, and 12, and they slowly come into like drinking wine. But I was very proud once, like our daughter, she was working in France, and she was 17. And then at 2:00 in the morning, we got a WhatsApp with a bottle of champagne, and she's like, "Do you think it's good?" And I was like, "Yes, I made it. We made it." She's not drinking anything.
No,
else.
how's it fun? Get rid of it.
No, we were our kids are very thoughtful, and also very a critic in a very positive way.
Yeah, we're proud of them.
Very
also
proud.
strong personalities. The best sense.
Well, Ed and Steph, it's really wonderful to meet you both today and taste your wines. We've been buying and selling these wines for over a decade, and our customers always love them. So it's nice to be able to meet you guys properly. We'd love one day to come and visit and see the old abandoned winery, which I'm sure looks a little bit nicer now.
Yeah.
And I just got to say, it's really inspiring, I think, to hear the message about, the obsession with the vineyards. And, we didn't talk about winemaking and the varieties because it's all about these sites, and also about you guys and what you're trying to, the legacy you're trying to leave, I think, with these wines and the business and the brand. So it always makes me think about, the longevity of these projects, which is really cool. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your trip. What are you up to next in Australia?
Brisbane,
Byron Bay.
and then back home.
up to Tom's restaurant up in Voro.
Yeah, we're gonna
Yes,
be,
very excited already.
And
Barheader.
Tom will take us on a wave. We'll go surfing, hopefully.
Yeah, okay. Good. I'm going to Byron in a couple of weeks, actually. I might run into you there. Cheeky monkeys, a bit of tabletop dancing. Awesome. All right, guys, thank you so
Thank
much.
you. And always welcome in Austria.
Yes.
Because it's always switching, you know, like when we tell people we are from Austria, they're like, Australia. And I'm like, no, it's
I told you, we are brothers. So I'll be there. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.